Hi, I'm Joe Connolly, business news reporter at WCBS New York, with Ian Weinberg, a certified financial planner and founder of FamilyWealth.com on Long Island, New York, who will give you ideas about ways to save your business if that's what you're facing, because the disruptions and the closings have gone on for so long. A lot of people are running out of time and funds to keep their business going. Producer Neil A. Carousso will join us in this discussion too. Ian, first of all, what are one or two things that business owners should know if they are near to losing their business or facing bankruptcy?
So there are a tremendous range of options that have been increased, extended, or added in the new stimulus package. And there are businesses out there that are on the verge of closing for so many different reasons. One of the biggest ones I found is that they weren't prepared for the speed required to get access to funding the first round when the early stimulus package came out back in spring. So I'd like to help make people aware of the fact that they need to prepare to be eligible and to be able to get accepted into the new PPP round 2. Also know more about extended EIDL opportunities.
That's economic injury disaster loan, which has also been expanded, right?
Correct.
Right.
And also to know about the change in the tax regulations that were not clear with PPP1 versus PPP2, and it dovetails back, it goes retro to PPP1. That's a very big deal too. A lot of people didn't even go for PPP1 because they thought that their expenses that they would be laying money out for if they got PPP money, and then they were making payroll, that they wouldn't be able to deduct that payroll expense. Some of them didn't even bother.
If a business owner has filed for bankruptcy or is about to, can they get one of these second rounds of PPP loans to possibly get them into spring or summer?
So the answer is, in all likelihood, yes. They can apply for PPP2, and if they're in bankruptcy, the bankruptcy court would have to approve it. If they're not in bankruptcy, and this is a solution to keeping them out of bankruptcy, by all means.
There are a lot of state, city, county, business improvement district, even community organization grants and loans that are available, and they have not gotten as much attention as they should because everything's been so focused on the virus and PPP.
Right.
There are a lot of options out there. I sometimes have told people on the radio, call your local or city hall to find out about some of these. How can they find out about these many less publicized funding options that might be available to them?
Yeah, the Small Business Administration, their website goes into then you type in your address and it gives you the local website, and the local website lists resources in addition to PPP and federal programs. They list resources like grants and loans available in your local regions, and I know that those have been useful for people that were on the verge of going under. They couldn't get PPP, but they got somewhere between $10,000 and $50,000 in the first round, in the first go around, and that was a big deal.
What are your clients telling you, those who are in trouble or getting into trouble?
So the ones that are in trouble are the ones that didn't anticipate trouble, which is unfortunate. The ones that anticipated trouble immediately began cutting staff, cutting expenses, communicating with clients, vendors, suppliers, trying to renegotiate terms of accounts receivable, accounts payable, landlords. renegotiating leases, extending leases. Those family businesses that we manage for and we advise, they've stayed afloat, and they stayed in close contact with their CPAs, their bankers, and they were able to access almost every financing option for their business. The ones that are still in trouble are sort of like the mom and pops that I know that were all cash businesses, had nothing digital, no online business. A restaurant that didn't have curbside takeout, didn't have a digital ordering system. You couldn't order online and pick up. They don't take credit cards. Their accountant wasn't on top of what they needed to do to qualify for PPP. Those businesses are hanging on by a thread if they're still hanging on. And number one, they should be evaluating, whether they should just shut down completely. Two, they could be evaluating whether they should go, look through the bankruptcy process and see if that's beneficial. And three, now that there's new financing, I think it's a new lifeline to say, wait a minute, maybe we can make this work. What do we need?
Neil. Yeah, Ian, you have a small business owner come to you, and obviously there's so many options on the table, but right now there's a second wave, there's a lot of uncertainty. How have those pivots played out for them, and is it viable long term?
So if you're a restaurant and you can bring yourself into this century in terms of thought process, technology, survival, you can make it if you figure out how you can model your business after, let's say, Chipotle, or numerous restaurants that are very good at doing curbside, that are very good at doing takeout with an online processing system. I'd rather see somebody invest in a methodology where they can transform their business so they can be a COVID-proof business or a COVID-resistant business going forward, as opposed to saying, let's build out a whole new restaurant now because we're going to figure out an attractive way to get people in the door. You're not getting people in the door.
Right. Now, how have some of the most successful business owners that you advise, what have they done to stay afloat? What are they doing right now?
Sure. So one business that we work with was a catering business, and they were very large and very successful. And all of a sudden, catering events dried up. They're gone. There are no catering events right now. They were able to land a government contract with New York City to feed the homeless.
Wow, interesting. So how has that been beneficial to is that a branding thing? Are they able to get government funding for doing that?
They got government funding. So they focused their efforts from catering to for-profit organizations and parties and events to identifying a need where the city had to feed people, the city had to pay for that food and the vendor service to do it. And they were fortunate enough to find out about it, and they went after it. They pivoted. They put their hat in the ring for the government contract, and they were awarded it.
Have owners that Ian, gone into their retirement funds or their home equity?
Sure.
And is that a good idea? Tell us about that.
It's not a good idea if you're trying to keep a business alive that's going to die anyway. Why would you want to start tapping your personal assets to do that if you haven't evolved, if your advisors and your accountants and your lawyers and your bankers haven't helped you identify a strategy to survive and then to grow in this COVID era? And if you're not capable of pivoting, no, I wouldn't go and touch those personal assets. I'd close the business.
Have you told any of your clients to close if the future is just bleak for them?
Fortunately, we've been prepared. Their other advisors have been prepared, their CPAs. But I know local businesses that it's not appropriate for me to say, hey, Joe, Neil, you should shut your broadcast business down.
Right,
But
it's their baby.
if they ask me what we should do, I would say, well, let's look at your numbers. What kind of money does the business have left in it? What kind of revenue is the business taking in? What are the business expenses today? And if you're going to be running at a deficit for the next 2 years and your business, you haven't been able to pivot in your business, you haven't been able to evolve, you might want to shut it down. If these loans are going to enable you to cover your costs and keep you afloat, I have no problem with taking advantage of the PPP or EIDL or other financing programs. But are you doing it to keep a business alive that's probably going to die anyway?
Right. But are some doing completely new areas? I mean, are you having clients come to you and actually make an extreme pivot to a totally different line of business? And are they finding new revenue streams?
Well, I'll give you the example. We have another client that's in the event business. And early on, they identified that events weren't going to be run live anymore. And they'd raise money for charities. Let's say they would do $1 million event for a charity. The charity would bring in $1 million. It was at a banquet hall. So it cost the charity $500,000 to do the event. And the charity netted $500,000. That same charity has figured out, and the event planner figured out, who was very wise, that these charities, this was back in the spring, should not do their live events. And this is when things were iffy with COVID. Oh, maybe things will open, maybe things won't. And they realized that going to a digital platform for their events, digital cocktail parties, digital fundraisers, digital celebrity events, they were still able to raise $1 million, and their overhead for the event was less than $200,000 because they didn't have to do the banquet hall, the catering, the staff on site, the liabilities. And they're finding that going digital really helped them leverage their resources. And the charity made $800,000 instead of $500,000 on the same event that people would have showed up to in black tie and tux.
We're hearing that a lot, that businesses and nonprofits are finding that holding these events online is so much less expensive.
Yes.
I wonder if some of these aspects will last. I mean, at some point, people will want to go to the event again.
Yes.
But it's funny you mention that, because several people have mentioned to me lately, they're doing this new thing, and gee, it's actually less trouble and more profitable. But I don't know if that'll last forever.
Let's take the event planning business as an example that I just mentioned. I've been to charity events. Charity events and a lot of other businesses have already been doing this and evolving before this ever happened, and they didn't know it. Because let's say 20% of the attendees couldn't come to the event. You've seen live auctions on video, structures before with charities, texts, emails, Zoom. All of these things were being done. They just were being done at like 10% of what the business was garnering. It was done digitally. Restaurants always had, good ones had a takeout platform and an ordering platform online already. They had arrangements with Grubhub and those other businesses like Uber Eats. So this business basically stepped up and took advantage. And what it shows is you've got to be a chameleon when you run a business. You need to have a hybrid model, a hybrid methodology to say, hey, Joe, Neil, we're going to prepare for the worst. We're going to hope for the best, but we're going to prepare for the worst. The worst case is this virus sticks around, another mutation evolves. The best case is things clear up after the vaccine is well distributed and we don't have these problems. But life in business and life in general is never going to look the same. You and I are not going to stop doing Zoom calls and Zoom meetings. Normally, when we take clients on, and it's a very personal process, we're managing their life savings. We're managing their family wealth. We're managing and advising on everything that's important to them about finance. It takes several in-person meetings. We meet with their other people, like their accountants and their attorneys. we've brought in 3 or 4 large families in the last few months, all via Zoom calls.
Wow. Neil, one more question?
Yeah, so you bring up, you have people come in, they obviously are expressing their financial situation with you. Do you have anybody come in and say, I see an opportunity out there. I see an opportunity to start a business right now? Because I'm reading a little bit about that some people say, you know what, this is actually a good time to invest in a business. Are you seeing that?
I couldn't agree with you more. Yes, you have to have the vision, but what you'll be doing if you're smart is structuring things this way, Neil. Okay, I'm in a business where I supply garments to the service industry, right? Uniforms for waitresses, waiters, chefs, staff people. It's not happening as fast as it was because there's not as much need for waitresses and waiters clothing, but I can start looking at a pivot. And let's say that pivot is I'm going to start doing all the uniforms and furnishing for drivers, for Uber drivers, for FedEx drivers, for UPS drivers, for shipping businesses. I know the shipping business is getting huge. How can I take my business that's in the clothing business and help that evolve and get integrated into this new economy? And if you're surviving in what you're doing, but you see that there's an opportunity to launch elsewhere, you can use these PPP funds to do some of that. You can use the EIDL funds to do some of that. It's okay. There's a 60-40 split on what you can use those loans for on PPP. And on EIDL, there's literally no restriction on what you can do, especially if you want to invest in technology. If you're going to start on a new business path, you're going to have to invest in technology today. Whether it be just subscribing to Zoom or building out your whole platform to do something more like a Slack technology where you've got an operating platform, you're going to have to invest in technology. PPP and EIDL encourage that.
What is the biggest mistake that you have seen business owners who see an opening in a new area make so that it doesn't work out for them, even though they thought they were ready for it to work?
So it's the old analogy, you see a nice retail space in a strip mall by you, and all of a sudden it says Italian restaurant coming soon. So let's just take the evolution of that. The restaurant owner signs a lease for 10 years. He puts up a large deposit, and then he has to build out the restaurant. He doesn't know that any customers are going to come, right? Can either of you guarantee that he's going to have customers?
No.
Brand new restaurant, right? Nobody knows it. So he spends $500,000 to build out a custom kitchen, a brick oven, a beautiful dining room, the whole shebang, and then nobody comes. So he's sitting with a loss of close to $1 million before he ever opened a business that didn't succeed.
What was the mistake? He didn't test market somehow?
It used to be if you stuck a good restaurant in a good strip mall in a good location, business would come. But you can't make that assumption anymore. So I would say now your point is right, Joe. You've got to do your research. Neil, if you want to get into a new business and you have an opportunity and you want to pivot, you've got to do your research. Also, you've got to go much less capital intensive. You can't manage millions and millions of dollars to a concept that's unproven. You can commit technology, you can leverage technology, you can outsource technology, you can outsource your staffing, and we could be running a business that's an investment banking firm right now, handling billions of dollars, just like this, sitting in 3 Zoom calls. We don't need any more overhead. We don't need any buildings. We don't need 5,000 lawyers sitting in fancy offices and an executive cafeteria. We don't need that. So this evolution is a great one. It's going to be even better because businesses will run lean and mean, and they'll be much more efficient. And think about how easy it is for all of us to get things done now. So if you're going to go and pivot, Joe, you've got to pivot in a way where you realize that you're adding value to this economy, and you're doing it with a business format that's very user-friendly. People are used to now just sitting at home, getting on their keyboard, plugging and playing, and ordering something, and that's it. So you've got to be prepared. If you're going to pivot, pivot where it's something that the new economy needs, that the new economy is going to welcome with open arms, and that is extremely user-friendly.
Ian, it has been so interesting to talk to you.
Thanks.
And I love talking to CPAs and CFPs. And one thing I notice about you is that you seem to have mastered being unemotional about money. Are you as unemotional about money as you seem to be?
I would say it's taken a while. Managing people's life savings, you kind of need to make sure that they know that you're here, that your hand doesn't waver. But it hasn't come without experience, that's for sure. So thank you. It's important, sure. You need to be, you can't be emotional about making an investment in a business. You need to be pragmatic, and you need to be a forward thinker. Just take the lessons from what this has taught us and apply them. It'll help.
Your experience shows. Thank you very much. Ian Weinberg, certified financial planner and founder of FamilyWealth.com. Great to know you. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian.
Great being here. Thank you for having me, guys.